Hi, everyone. Welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Tyler Milligan, Managing Partner at Milligan Partners. In this role, Tyler delivers strategic, operational, and technical consulting services. His hands-on expertise in project planning, development, implementation, and operation successfully covers a range of toll road models, from traditional cash to open road tolling and managed lanes. Tyler has successfully supported programs for public and private agencies across the United States. Milligan Partners is a platinum sponsor, and in 2021, Tyler will serve as chair of the Council of Platinum Sponsors, which provides thought leadership and strategic guidance to the IBTTA Board of Directors. Tyler, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Hey, Pat, thank you for having me.
Well, this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee and we talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And this morning, I have a special shout out to Cindy Norcross. Cindy is the Director of Research and Technology for IBTTA and oversees all aspects of TollMiner, IBTTA's data visualization tool, including software development, data collection, report generation, and updates to the tool. Cindy also oversees our association management system, the technological central nervous system of IBTTA, which organizes all data and information pertaining to our members. Cindy, thanks for all you do. This is membership renewal time, and we sent the membership renewal packets in October, so you should have received your packet by now. If you have any questions, please contact Terry Langford, who's our Membership and Business Development Manager. Also, there is a 2021 membership renewal page on the IBTTA website featuring videos by Samuel Johnson, our 2020 president, and Mark Compton, our 2021 president. I encourage you to take a look at that page and see some of the many accomplishments of IBTTA over the past year. There's also a bunch of testimonials from other IBTTA members. So please support IBTTA by renewing your membership, and we appreciate your support. Well, we are taking your questions today. Use the chat function and select all panelists and attendees. And we want to get you started right away. So in the chat function, type one word or phrase that describes your feelings about small businesses and entrepreneurs. Tell us one word or phrase that describes your feeling about small businesses and entrepreneurs. All right. Bold, driving our economy. Essential to progress. The best, needed, mighty. Backbone. Yeah. Brave, challenging, unique. Wow, this is good stuff. They're talking about you, Tyler.
Where's the scary and the risk?
The scary
the risk relationship.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have here? Essential to our communities. Drive the economy. Risk takers. Okay. Pushing the envelope. Essential. All right. Well, this is good. Maybe we'll come back to these some of these comments. Not for the faint of heart. There you go, Barbara Gannon. She should know, right?
Thank you, Barbara.
Right. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Well, Tyler, let's get into our conversation here. And you, like many people, took a circuitous route to the position that you're in now. We know that your introduction to tolling involved one of your jobs being with the North Texas Tollway Authority. But also in your background, you have this firm known as Chips and Spokes. Tell us what you learned from your early experiences inside and outside of tolling.
Sure. I should mention I saw Mark Bauma commented in the chat section. I think NTTA holds a dear place in my heart. That was my first job at a college, and I worked for Mark in the engineering department. I think NTTA was still at a bit of a growth phase back in the 2000s, and so it allowed an opportunity for a lot of people to do a lot of shared responsibilities, work together as a team, we tried to encourage and develop a family relationship. I think that really taught me the opportunity for collaboration. It definitely has. It's touched me in a way that when I think about clients, I tend to say we, because I tend to see myself back in the days when I was sitting at NTTA and a couple desks away from Mark and working with the gang there. Chips and spokes. That's an interesting circumstance. So after Matt and I started our company back in 2012, we didn't have any work for about 6 months, and so to pay the bills and fill the time a little bit, I thought about the two things that I was good with my hands doing. I could work on computers. I built computers through college for folks, and I actually used to work at a bike shop back in high school. And so thus chips and spokes, the chips side for the computer and the spokes side for the bikes. Actually, when I made my business card, on one side it was for bicycles and you flip it around, and the other side was for computers. I'd have a lot of strange looks whenever I tell people the scope of that work, but it was a way for me to continue to keep my hands busy. I really like problem solving, and that was a way for me to continually problem solve. And I think, if anything, I wanted to take a moment to thank a few people like Mark Bauman in my past, Kim Daly at Jacobs, Darby Swank at Capsh, and the folks at Hectra for giving us our first contracts. That really took us from just being an idea in our head to real opportunity and helping us build our career. So I just want to thank those folks for helping us along the way.
Tyler, it's a truism, isn't it? That, nobody's an island, nobody makes it on their own. There's a lot of helping hands along the way. So I think it's great that you're acknowledging all the help and guidance that you got along the way. And speaking of that, you mentioned, having hands busy. You recently posted on LinkedIn a story about the New York State Thruway Authority and how they're making their migration to all electronic tolling, which is eliminating a lot of manual toll collection, keeping the hands busy. And you also have a story about toll collectors from your days at NTTA. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to spend some time at NTTA managing toll collectors in the toll operations department. Kevin Williams was my manager. He has since retired, but that was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. It's definitely easy to overlook the human side of doing business, and toll collectors are special people. They're the true face, at least the ones that still exist. That they're definitely a face of our industry and our business. And for anyone that's ever gone through a toll booth and dealt with a toll collector, it's always nice to get a smile, even though it's a very momentary experience. One example that I called out a few examples in my past that really stood out to me. Another one that I thought was worth sharing today is one that I remember as if it was yesterday. It was a circumstance where one of my managers that worked for me was sitting with his three supervisors. He was having a monthly meeting with his staff, and I was attending just to participate and support the team. And the executive staff at NTTA had created a policy and pushed down some tasks that we as the toll collection department had to deploy, and it was an in-lane task that we had to deploy. It wasn't necessarily accepted with open arms by the toll collectors and the staff that had to support it. A lot of times the toll collection staff sometimes feel separated from the main office, and they struggle to understand the why behind some of their procedures that are dictated to them. And me being a good servant, I was a little bit too objective in my method of communicating how they should deliver the work in the lanes. And thankfully, one of the supervisors was very vocal in communicating back to me that he didn't feel supported. He didn't feel like that I was listening to them and being as empathetic as I should have been. It was a strong message because I completely understood their concerns, but I had sort of taken it as a good soldier to deploy and deliver that task. And the lesson there was that I needed to spend some time talking through the intent that we didn't have a choice. and our job was to deliver service with a smile and make the most of a tough circumstance. And there's times where it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit and you got to stand out there and you got to do your job. And sometimes you got to do things that you don't always want to do, but it was our job to make sure that, and I think the message to me was our toll collectors didn't need to see the frustration that the supervisors and the management felt. It was our job to also communicate downward that we're there to support them and hold them up, even if they don't necessarily like what they're doing. So it was a really good opportunity for me to stop and ask myself, what are my staff's concerns, and how do I effectively listen, internalize those concerns, but ensure that I'm still doing my job as a manager.
We are visiting with Tyler Milligan, managing partner of Milligan Partners, and we are taking your questions. Please put them in the chat function and select all panelists and attendees. And speaking of, the human side of things, Tyler, one of the conversations we had, we were talking about small businesses and entrepreneurs, and you've talked about how some organizations are intensely focused on billable hours, as well they should be, because that's how they make their money. But you once said to me that there's 10 times more value in an extra week of vacation, or my employees getting training and fulfillment than there is in me making more money. Tell us more about that, your thinking behind that.
Sure. Whenever Matt and I started, we sat down with our new business and started to work through all the ideas of, it's like time off. How do you manage time off? What days do we give to the employees? How do we pass those benefits on? And it allowed us to, at least allowed me to internalize the true cost of those benefits and understand, ask myself, because me being the owner, my choices, it's either between how do I earn and make money, and how do I translate our opportunity to earn revenue, and balance the idea of what do our benefits look like to our employees, and based on how much money I actually take home as an owner. And it really was significant to me when I thought about billability, because I came from a large corporation, where we had very distinct goals. And I was very fortunate to always exceed those goals. And so I spent some time thinking about, okay, what's the benefit of my hard work, and how is that correlated with the message as a corporation, tied to what they want me to do on a day-to-day basis and how they want me to perform my job. Even at the time, I was very, very fortunate. It wasn't on purpose, but my daughter was 6 months old when we started our company, and my son was 3. So I got to spend a lot of time at home with them. I was able to take the load off my wife a bit. She's fully employed and worked at a hospital at the time. And so it just really allowed me to internalize and contemplate, what does a holiday day look like? And what does it look like, even from the subtlety of when you look at, like for me as a consultant working for a client that's a public entity, their days off are dictated to them sometimes, like through federal holidays and whatnot. And so as a corporate employee, I most likely didn't get all the days that they got off. So I wanted to think about, what is that experience between when your client has a day off and you don't have a day off? Where's the reasoning between how do I manage how many days off they get? And so it just allowed me to spend some time contemplating. And I've tried to do this with our current businesses, is to make sure that our employees understand that anytime they have a need, they desire training, they want to better themselves, we try to do everything we can to give them that opportunity. I think in the end, if I'm making less money in my pocket, but they're succeeding, I think that's the true level of success.
Tyler, we have a question here from Dr. Barbara Gannon, who was recently a guest on Café IBTTA. What has surprised you as you and the industry have had to pivot during COVID-19?
The word surprise stands out to me. I think we're all struggling through similar challenges. I think what I've taken to heart is, as employer and manager, there's some some subtleties around the difference between a written HR policy and an employee having either mental health challenges due to the current environment, or having to manage their children in a different way. I recently talked to a fellow that works tangentially on a project with me, and his kids are 3 and 5, and both he and his wife work. And in the city they work in, daycare for their circumstances has been closed till the end of the year. And he's really struggling because he said, I'm having to work nights and weekends because I don't have a choice. My kids don't understand the circumstances I'm in, and we have limited resources on how to cover those kids. And so as an owner, and also sometimes HR manager and legal department, I have to ask myself, okay, what should the policy look like? How stringent should it be? And that's really been tough because I want to be consistent. I'm a very analytical and objective person, but I realize that in these circumstances that the rigidity actually limits and harms our employees. And so that's been a really tough challenge. I think that's been the biggest surprise. I still don't know where I want to fall after this, honestly, because I have to contemplate my policies and procedures, and I don't know how. I honestly don't sometimes know how stringent to be, and that's been tough.
The word subtlety really stands out for me. And you talked about the difference between a written HR policy and what you actually do or what you actually should do. And it makes me think of something you posted recently on LinkedIn. You recently shared an award-winning Toastmasters speech by Mohammed Khatami on the topic Words Matter. And this gentleman actually won this Toastmasters competition. Could you walk us through what it was that resonated with you about that speech?
Sure. And it's in the, if everybody takes a look at the chat, the link is in the chat currently. So I definitely suggest you copy and paste that out, take a look. Muhammad, it was very striking to me because I think words are very, very important. I remember years ago sitting with Matt on his patio one day, and we were just hanging out with some friends, and we were talking about managing employees and how every word that a manager says to an employee is important, even if it's lighthearted or off the cuff. And I honestly struggle as I'm raising 2 kids and trying to be a good husband and a good employer. I really struggle with the way words have been used in the past couple of years, and how words have added to our political divisiveness in our country. And I think words are really, really important, no matter how you believe, or if you do or disagree, if you agree or disagree with someone else. I think the words, for example, name calling in politics really frustrates me. If I'm trying to raise my kids to not name call other kids and bully other kids, then it's really hard for me to when they see examples in public around name calling. That really frustrates me because it hinders my ability to be a good father. I want to read a quote from Mr. Cantani. He says, words, when said and articulated in the right way, can change someone's mind. They can alter someone's belief. You have the power to bring someone from the slums of life and make a successful person out of them, or destroy someone's happiness using only your words. And that to me says it all. I think that we could stand to use some more empathy and love and compassion to each other. I think that we would all benefit from that.
Well, Tyler, that really resonates with me. And also the notion of every word you say to your colleagues and employees matters. And I remember, many moons ago in another life, saying to an employee, I want you to be successful. And I thought this was a very innocent way to say, I'm with you, I'm behind you. And this employee interpreted that as, you don't think I'm successful. And, subtlety is really important, and understanding, how words affect people and the position that they come from is a very important thing, and also very challenging. I wonder if you have any example to share with us about an experience where you thought you were using the right words, but maybe, it just didn't come off as you had intended?
I think, honestly, it goes back to that example I posed earlier where, like I mentioned, I can see it as if it was yesterday, sitting in for those NTTA, sitting at Plaza 3 in the observation room. I had all intention to communicate my support, but the words they heard were the complete opposite. And I think, if anything, the message that I would put across today is, if it wasn't for that one employee who challenged me, who was 2 levels below me, I wouldn't have stopped and internalized and learned that lesson. And so I think it's very valuable, especially in the workplace and even at home. I think there's I'm sure you'll get to it, Pat, but there's a list of books that I want to push out. One of the books talks about the idea that we don't have the full picture in a challenge between 2 people. And so I didn't have the full picture of what they were hearing from me until he spoke and responded. And so it's critical that you stand up when you think something doesn't make sense, and especially if you hear something that you don't feel like is supportive from someone that you work for. I think that's very valuable. It's not necessarily to challenge them, but I think they need to understand. They need to hear your perspective. There's a book in the chat list, in my book list that I posted there, called Crucial Conversations. And one of the key things about Crucial Conversations, it pushes by the notion that there's actually a very brief story in there that say you're driving down the road and you're on the highway just cruising along, and a car comes up on you at 100 miles an hour, and they're flashing their lights, and you got to get out of the way, and you're shaking your fist at them as they drive by. And a little farther along, you're driving along, and you come up you're in the right lane, and you come up on this car who's driving 50 miles an hour on a 70-mile Texas highway. And you're laying on your horn, and you have to pull around them and get around them. You're thinking, what in the heck are they doing? They can pull off and take another route if they're going to go slow. Well, the reality of the circumstance is that you don't know that the car that's speeding by you is a husband and a wife, and she's going into labor. You don't know the circumstances that are taking them at that rate. And maybe the slow car has someone's grandmother who's just coming back from the eye doctor, and she's just had her eyes dilated, and she doesn't have someone to take her home, and that's the only way she knows to go home. The point is that we don't always have the full picture. And when you attack a important conversation with half the picture, it's very easy to get distracted and make assertions or assumptions around that conversation. It briefly comes to mind an experience I had with an employee once upon a time, where I had a meeting that was really important to me, and it reoccurred every 2 weeks. And that employee continually was late. And it really, really frustrated me. And my initial reaction was, well, this employee doesn't care about my meeting. So I stopped. Thankfully, I had just experienced Crucial Conversations, and I stopped, and I reached out to the employee, and I said, hey, my expectations are that you come to my meeting on time. This is really important to me. I see that you're not coming to these meetings on time, and it upsets me and frustrates me. I'd like you to communicate to me what's happening. And the reality was that on that day, there was a shift circumstance where that employee had to take over some additional responsibilities depending on the circumstances at that plaza. And so therefore the employee said, I can't always control that, but I'm trying to do the best I can to get there on time, and I've got to get another vehicle, and I've got to come to your office, and it's just sometimes not easy. And so that allowed me to move the meeting 30 minutes, which completely and totally fixed the circumstances. Whereas if I hadn't stopped to talk to this employee, I would have shown that employee that I may have not have cared. I may have not have communicated properly. The emotions that you bring to a conversation up front when you don't have the full picture can very quickly change the entire conversation. So it's very important that you stop and ask the question, or find a way to at least explain your feelings and your perception, and be open to the other person's opportunity to communicate back to you.
Our guest today is Tyler Milligan, managing partner with Milligan Partners, and we are taking your questions. Please post them in the chat function using panelists, all panelists and attendees. We've been talking a lot about feeding the soul here today, Tyler. Let's talk about feeding the belly a little bit. You like to cook, and you really enjoy it. And recently, you posted something about making butter on LinkedIn. What's that all about? Tell us about that.
Sure. And so in the chat, I've also got a couple recipes that I'd like you to take away. So please, if you can, copy and paste those and take a look. Yeah, the butter topic, even though it's a small thing and it's a little silly, it's fascinating because to me, it's simple chemistry. Butter is something that we may or may not use on a daily basis in our kitchen, and the fact that I can make it. My perception before the day that I learned about that was taking a churner and sitting there and churning it on the farm. And so I lost that connection to creating butter. Cooking, definitely, the kitchen is my happy place. I love to cook. As I was talking to you earlier, Matt, he also enjoys cooking. He's a little more fancy. I remember years ago, he cooked this amazing beef fillet roast, and it probably was $100 cut of meat. And that right there just scares the heck out of me. But he cooked it for our entire family, and it was amazing. To me, I feel like when I'm in the kitchen, I'm like a conductor in the orchestra. I learned to really love cooking after watching Alton Brown on Good Eats. I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with him, but I suggest you take a look at Alton Brown. One of the things that he's doing today is he's pushing out weekly updates. COVID hit them in an interesting way, and so he's really engaged very effectively to continue communicating the love of cooking. The first time I ever came across Alton Brown, it was a gumbo episode. And honestly, when I first fell upon the show, he had a habit of taking his employees, his staff, and dressing them in ridiculous outfits to communicate his message about the chemistry of cooking. And here you had these two people. One was dressed up as a starch molecule and the other was dressed up as a fat molecule. And they were rubbing against each other because he was talking about the concept of making a roux. And the idea about how to make a good roux is that you actually have to coat the starch molecules with the fats to protect them so they don't burn. Even the subtlety he talked about in that episode of when you're making a roux, it takes a true expert making a roux on the stove, because the stovetop, if it's not a gas stovetop, can actually have some significant fluctuations in heat. And so he said, you know what, if you're having trouble making a roux, shove it in the oven. Sometimes the oven temperature can be more consistent. And so it's a complete, and so he was able to take the chemistry behind making a piece of the food and then taking some simplicity and not complicating it in the kitchen as well. So if you have an oven, then instantly you're capable of listening and learning and translating that into a better experience. It's really helped me to be a better cook. I really enjoy it.
This is Café IBTTA, where we talk about chemistry, cooking, and other interesting topics. Some of them are related to tolling and transportation, but not always. And Tyler, it wouldn't be fair for us to talk about cooking and all this delicious food without mentioning your sister-in-law, Polly Milligan, who makes wonderful food as well. Although I haven't tasted it, but I've seen it on social media. Huh? Can you tell us a little bit about this cooking thing that inhabits your family?
Well, I can tell you this, Polly, something really special that we missed this year, and I'm sure we'll make up for it, is Polly's from Taiwan, and the kids love her cooking. And so every year Thanksgiving, she'll send me the list. I'll go to the local Asian market. I'll get all the supplies. We'll go to my parents' house and we'll make 100 dumplings by hand. And that's the experience. And the amazing part is there's only 6 of us eating, but those dumplings will be gone within 2 meals. So it's been a fantastic opportunity to learn about new ideas, new cooking, and new flavors, and learn how to do them by hand.
Tyler, I'm going to pause for a moment and make a couple of announcements, and then we'll come back to you for your final words of wisdom. Next week, our guest on Café IBTTA is Paul Skatelis. Paul is president and CEO of the American Public Transportation Association, which represents several thousand toll agencies and business partners all across North America. Other upcoming programs, December 7th, Managing Your Career with Intentionality. Marcia Clark, executive coach and independent consultant, will lead that webinar presented by the Women in Tolling Council. On December 14, the Young Professionals presents Meet the IBTTA Leaders, Get Involved, Make a Difference. This is an opportunity for you to learn more about the work of important IBTTA committees, councils, task forces, and meeting planning groups. Check the IBTTA website for details on all of our events. So Tyler, what final words of wisdom do you have for us before we say goodbye?
I think I'd be remiss to say, for all of you folks out there listening, if you have a young professional in the industry that you want to get engaged, please send them to the IBTTA website to sign up and get on our mailing list and get engaged as a young professional so that we can help better insert them into our network.
Tyler, thank you so much for being with us today on Café IBTTA. It's been a delight. I think the spirit of Thanksgiving is spilling over into the following week, and I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to all the members of IBTTA for everything that you do to advance the mission of IBTTA and support mobility around the world every day. So today we say, be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, Tyler.